Hey everybody, and welcome to a special edition of the podcast today. One of the staples of the community, loved by everybody. Unless you're racing against a guy, he's probably made you hurt once or twice. Motti Pikelny, how are you doing, my man?
Good. How are you, Jesper? Glad to
I'm
be here.
good. I will first of all apologize for butchering your name for the better part of like 9 months, 8 months. That's totally on me, but
That's all right. It almost turned into like an alter ego. Mati was like my Moti's superhero personality on esports. So
well, if the
no
racing ever
problem.
starts to go bad, I'll just bring out Motti once more. Maybe that'll inject some power back into the legs. But Motti, what we're here to talk today is, of course, the racing. That's really where you've made your name. You've come in and you are a fierce competitor so much that you are number one seeded here in the CVRcade World Cup bracketed session. How does that feel to be that number one seed?
Super exciting. Super exhausting. Did three omniums on Saturday to try to pull that off and just squeak by Tim Fulford in the standings, and it worked out. So pretty happy. That was sort of a personal goal for the bracketed session and accomplished it, and now got to try to recover before the tournament.
Well, first of all, congratulations on that. But cognition, what about like I remember Moti when you first came to me and you're like, Jesper, me and Allison, we're gonna make cognition. What do you think of it? We chatted back and forth. The next day you send me like a letter like that just keeps on going and going and going. I mean, you are incredibly dedicated. Talk me through and shed some light, because I don't think a lot of people know this, the amount of work that went into setting up cognition.
Yeah, Allison and I wanted to put together a e-racing team for CVRcade that was different from anything that existed either on Cade or any other platform, that we thought would both leverage the particular dynamics that favor teamwork in Cade, and that fit both Allison and my own racing and teamwork ethic and ideals in real life. So we came up with a new idea and a team structure that's built around diversity, cooperation, and collaboration, with a system of prize sharing and incentive structures, to really maximize not only our individual chances as racers, but our overall chances as a team by rewarding collaboration and incentivizing and encouraging collaboration at every level and at every point in racing, from the open session to the bracketed session to the things that are coming up.
That's fantastic. I didn't even really remember that. Talk me, how do you agree to share the money? Because I know on the flip side, a team like Cycling Hub is whatever you win, you get to keep. How do you, as a collective, come together and agree on a split?
Well, in our current structure, we have something called a season active racer status for Team Cognition. And to achieve season active racer status, you have to have completed a minimum number of omniums in an open session. And depending on the structure with respect to advancement in a bracketed session or further phases of competition, all you have to do is participate to get your season active racer status. And that's either, regardless of whether or not you come on top and win the bracketed session points overall like I did, or if you were part of helping me do that, like many Team Cognition members were along the way. And it really means that all of us are able to respond to what's going on in any race as it unfolds. We don't have to designate who our ringer is or who the leader is. We see how things begin to shake out and can take advantage of whatever the opportunities to become super domestiques or leaders in a particular race, track, omni, or session, as needed. And that maximizes our potential to have any one of us move forward, and be successful, not just in an individual race, but in the World Cup overall. And anybody that has achieved Team Cognition season active racer status will then split equally the winnings of whomever, or the combination of winnings of whomever advances in the World Cup final. The only things that are kept under the current structure separately are individual primes or incentives that are like one-time things, like what happened with the first week of World Cup racing, I think, in the open
Yes.
session.
I think
And I think
everybody
that's
shares the
something very
same
different.
facial reaction I had when you mentioned that, Moti. Literally, my jaw just dropped. I'm like, what? Like, that is the way you've got to take it if you want to be a real organization to that degree. Like, we have the rider passes, the event passes, every pass in the game, but now there's a team cognition pass as well. And that's insane. I absolutely love that. And, Moti, that makes sense now because I mean, for so long, I've seen you race for Allison, for Sebastian, for Luis, and for Daniel, and for Sadeo, and it goes all around. And I'm sitting there thinking, Moti could probably walk the floor with these guys if he really wanted to today, and he gets angry, and the alter ego, Motti, comes out to play. But that's not often, like, as a collective, that must be quite empowering to know that you've all got each other's backs.
It is, and once any of us achieves a certain goal in a race or a positioning to be able to take a podium, it really becomes the team's focus in real time as we're talking in the audio chat. And it means that being a domestique on a particular race, event, omnium, or series is as important as being the person who ends up at the top of the podium. And that gives us all an advantage, not just for the financial outcomes of the World Cup at the end, but for fun and feeling a sense of agency and effective. And if there's anything that we've seen from the almost year of racing on Cade right now, is that team tactics and teamwork are the most important factor in success, especially when you're talking about multiple people moving forward.
And now it's the tournament for the bracketed session. I did initially plan on talking to you about positive and negative racing, but that's just thrown me for a loop. I did not either remember that from reading your long letter at the initial back in the day or know that. But you've got 5 racers, I believe, 6 if you include yourself with the bye in the racing here. You've got Sadeo, you've got Daniel, who are in a group together. So does this mean that you're all trying to bring each other through in order to take as much money as possible?
We're all trying to bring each other through and bring people through as unscathed as possible in order to take as much glory. The money is just is nice and exciting and increases the sense of reality and fun and is sort of like the cherry on the top. But yeah, our goal is to win. For Team Cognition to win this tournament and to put as many riders as highly placed as we can. And how that's going to happen, we don't know, but we have the team structure, we have the organization, and we have all the tools at our disposal to respond to whatever happens in these early days of the tournament in a way that I don't think we would be positioned to otherwise had we not worked in our team group chat and in our team communications and structures on this plan and on this sharing idea that fits our team organization. As new World Cups and series rules change in the future, we may have to respond and alter some of the structure. But basically, we think the core principle of sharing, equal participation, and flexibility is key to success on Cade and is key to fundraising for us. On a weekly basis and in a series basis as well.
Well, that is physical equalization at its core. Everybody can race. It doesn't matter. Like, you've heard that spiel a million times over in the streams. But that's why it's so powerful, because who knows? Like, right now, with the first and second seed being Moti and Tim, perhaps it's the Ninja Warrior Daniel LeBlanc who goes up and wins all the money, but it doesn't matter. But with all the strategizing that you guys do, I know you do a lot of the communication amongst the riders. Is blocking a concern coming into the tournament now? Because 4-on-4 racing, it's gonna be difficult. Is this something you account for?
I think that blocking and strategies related to racing with teammates in events is something that's evolved naturally, not just within Team Cognition, but as an entire CVRcade racer community. Not only have we talked amongst teams in races and during practices. But we've also talked on the riders group afterwards and exchanged individual messages talking about how things went down, and gone on long philosophical threads, and thrown in our 2 cents and tried to communicate about what we think about how things work, and what's outside of bounds, what's inside of the bounds, and we've come a long way. I think that the game has such precise physics and such reliable game inputs that the types of things you can do with your avatar, from the way we move our avatars with the trainers, to the ability to move the avatars laterally and into lanes, and to slow down in lanes, to block, to threaten to block, are things that everybody can do equally. And not just can we equally do them, we can reliably do them. So it's not like something only works one time or a little bit. If you know how to do something, and if you practice blocking, or if you practice avoiding blocking, that practice is going to be handy with deploying the tactic, or avoiding someone else deploying the tactic later on. And I think it's much like racing outdoors, that you can't, the game design, what makes it exciting is the fact that it allows a lot of rider choice and agency, and that can lead to exciting outcomes, and exciting things that happen, and also frustrating things that happen. If those were engineered away completely, the game wouldn't be as exciting and wouldn't be as fun, because there would be less that we could do. And when there's less that we can do with fewer inputs, like the lane changing, or like the blocking, or like slowing down, the less it becomes like outdoor racing. And we've really seen that play out in the types of things that happen, not just at the front of the race, but all the way down, the little races that happen in the middle of each race for positions that ultimately affect the standings. And there is no like big Team Cognition byline or 8-page document like you might expect about blocking.
Thou shalt not block.
Right. But we talk about, when we were in a race, and there were 3 of us in Zone T, and we were taking on racers who didn't have teammates, we talked about trying to, we had the numbers, and we should easily be able to accomplish our goals with, some people have called it positive racing. I don't know if that term fits it, but by collaborating off the front to help reduce the workload of the person that we were trying to get over the line, rather than accomplishing the same thing by increasing the workload for somebody on another team. And even though those two things might accomplish the same thing, with numbers, it seemed like it would be more fun for us and more fun for the other racers who may not have had as many teammates to do the former rather than the latter. So it's really just sort of a natural response to like what's going on, and I think that that will continue to play out, and teams will communicate with each other, and that's part of the fun of it.
Something I'm keen to get your take on, because if I go back in the archives of blocking, I think you were the very first person I ever saw doing it in the team league, where it was you on Beth or something. You pulled her out of the racing. Brilliant maneuver, like way ahead of the time with all the conversations we're blocking. This is way back in the day, but yeah. You came from the Zwift world, Motti. You came from racing the CVR World Cup on Zwift in Los Angeles. I remember seeing you there. You did well. You won a sprint, I believe. You were up in the points. But now that the pocket rocket, the blocket rocket, Jonathan Heron, whatever you want to call him, he's this enthusiastic guy who comes from Zwift, comes on over, and when you have the blocking, you have the lane changes, talk me through that perspective of suddenly, like, you have nothing on Zwift. It's just sprint to the end, that's your race. But now you have so many options. What's that like to get used to and have all that fun?
It's incredibly empowering and fun. And I think that why it was such a shock at the beginning of the Team League series, which, we're 8 months from now, or 6 months from the beginning of that, was because people hadn't necessarily anticipated how that would play out when there was a designee, which was the way that series was set up. So racing for Carrie, it was really clear, in order to help her in the point standings when she had an early crash, or other riders went off the front. What I could do, because my finishing position wasn't going to make a big difference, I needed to try to slow other people down. And in real time, we saw a lot of people sort of realize that simultaneously. And it wasn't just the outcomes of one race. We were playing for points over the course of an entire league series. That was sort of what kicked off the whole conversation about the structure of racing, points incentives, and all the kind of stuff that includes the conversation of blocking. But that's just part of the whole mix of figuring out what this sort of really intense racing is going to be on this platform where you can actually do things. It's fun to be able to affect the outcome by helping someone and knowing exactly how you're helping is helping them. It's fun to be able to not just block, but threaten to block. If you watch the race Zone T, I think it was the last Zone T that Luis on Team Cognition won, on Summit Islands, Luis had to finish first and I had to finish second in front of Nigel. And Homer was ahead. Nigel was behind me, but I had to somehow get Luis ahead of me and still stay ahead of Nigel. And I zoomed out in front. And the point of my zooming out in front was not to block, but was to let Nigel know that I can block you, and you're going to have to rethink how you're going to get around me and how you're going to save your energy for this last climb. And it did make him slow down a little bit because he was anticipating what I could do, not necessarily what I was going to do. And that managed to play out well. And I think there was only one small, I guess we'd call it a bump in that situation. And had I blocked him, in using a more severe blocking technique, it might have worked to get Luis ahead, but it might have cost me the ability to pull in second, which would have cost Luis the overall. So it's not just blocking or not blocking. This stuff is very complicated, and figuring it all out in real time and being able to pull it off in real time is both challenging, exciting, and extremely rewarding.
But that's what makes the streaming, the races. I mean, Motti, you did 3 zones, like back to back and then a tiny bit more back. That's just insane. Like, to do that, it requires both mental stimulation of having fun, but also the physical strength. I know you're a busy man here on the falling rope. I want your prediction. Who do you think is going to run away with the $3,000 come the end of the week?
I don't know who it's going to be, but I'm going to tell you, I think it's going to be a member from Team Cognition. I think that we've got the structure, we've got the communication, we've got the camaraderie, and we've got this figured out in a way that I don't think I would want to put money on anyone else. And the reason why I can't tell you which rider is because it's exactly the structure, not just of our team, but of CVRcade. That means those two things combined, we don't know who's going to rise to the top, but we're ready to react and create that situation and make that happen as it plays out.
Well, if Cognition doesn't know who's going to win, then neither does the rest of the peloton. So these sneaky attacks from Motti, from Allison at the top. Thank you so much, Motti. I look forward to watching you racing. Thank you so much for being a positive influence in the community and bringing together one of the greatest teams that are in there. And if you want to join Cognition, send Motti a message, or if you're racing on the platform, I'm fairly certain he'll find you if he believes you've got talent. Thank you very much, Motti, and hope you have great success on the platform.